Well, very excited to have you on the podcast, Dr. Sarah. Tell me a little bit about what's your background in diet and nutrition and what brought you to the crazy world of the carnivore diet?
Whoa, okay. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, Justin. Um, I grew up in Lebanon, the land of your ancestors, and did my bachelor's and my master's in nutrition and dietetics because I've always battled weight issues. Um, and a lot of it was also, I guess, self-esteem because I sometimes look at pictures and it's not like I was that overweight. But I was definitely never skinny, you know?
Mhm.
And so I said to myself that if I did my bachelor's in nutrition, I would never have to battle any weight issue ever again. And then on the first day of my bachelor's, my professor was very overweight. If we want to apply the scientific term, it would be obese class 2 probably. So love her to death. She's the best. But that kind of shattered this idea that I had in my mind that all you needed was knowledge. And I realized, like, just because you know what to eat or you know what not to eat, because we all know probably cake isn't gonna let you lose weight, right? And then so I realized like it's more than that. But at the same time, I don't think I made as much of a close link as I have done recently with regards to the addiction research that I've done, and the addiction research that I continue to work on, and you know, just working in that field a lot. So after I did my bachelor's, master's, and the dietetic internship, passing the board exams to becoming a licensed dietitian, all that stuff, then I hopped on a plane and I did my doctorate in Miami at the University of Miami in exercise physiology and nutrition. And also, you know, started teaching at and also Miami-Dade College and DeVry University and the American College of Sports Medicine. And I would teach nutrition and exercise physiology courses and all that kind of stuff. And to this day, I continue actually, I've just kept a part-time adjunct faculty position with Miami-Dade College where I'm a nutrition professor there. So that was the traditional academic kind of route and background. Meanwhile, I've been trying to follow what I was taught and constantly struggling with that. And little did I know, actually, I knew, but I was in denial because I actually did my master's dissertation, my doctoral dissertation in sugar addiction. So I looked at, you know, exercise, high intensity interval exercise, training bouts, and how they affect parameters of sugar addiction, specifically chocolate addiction. So I had to do a deep dive when I wrote that literature review back in 2015. And so I really knew about the research showing how the sweet taste can be far more addictive than cocaine. But somehow it didn't really snap me out of my denial. I was still doing the Atkins bars and all that crazy stuff. It wasn't until recently that I stumbled across additional studies that show the same thing, only with heroin, that the sweet taste is far more addictive. So by a very large margin, far more addictive than heroin. And I think that was like the final nail in the coffin. Or I was like, okay, I can't be getting the sugar-free Gatorade anymore, or the artificially sweetened and flavored electrolyte mixes and the Quest bars and all that stuff that you kind of rationalize because it's low carb. I can't be doing that anymore. And that's really, I think that was a major shift in my approach, not only personally, but also in the way that I work with my clients.
Mhm.
And yeah, I see, you know, clients all the time. I do group coaching for not just carnivore diet support and troubleshooting, but a lot of it also has to do with sugar addiction and keeping them sober, food sober. Those are the terms that we use. And it's been amazing. I mean, the sheer amount of success that I've garnered, it's like, I don't think I've ever had a client, maybe one, and that was because I was still allowing the artificially sweetened stuff because I was still doing it.
Mm.
But other than that, it's the success rate on carnivore it's unheard of. I've never come across probably like 95%. And I can't even think of one person who did not achieve success that has worked with me on a carnivore diet for weight loss. Also fertility. I've had 3 clients so far come out of menopause. The latest client that I'm working with right now, she's 50 years old, hasn't had her cycle for 2 years, like officially in menopause, and she literally just got her period. That's literal reversal of aging. I had a client a couple of months ago, or is it 3 months ago? I don't remember. She was in Canada trying to conceive. She came to me specifically for fertility because she had heard of another client that I worked with in Greece who also came out of menopause in her 50s. So she heard about that and she wanted to work with me to help her conceive. She wants to grow her family. She has 1 child and she wanted more, but she had spent the last, I think, like 6 or 7 years spending thousands of dollars, seeing everybody, treatments, all kinds of stuff. Nothing worked. She works with me literally 1 month. We did a super strict lion diet, nothing but beef, salt water. I get an email literally yesterday morning, which is like May 5th. She just wanted to let me know that she's 6 weeks pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I still can't believe it. I mean, yeah. So yeah, that's what I do. I do one-on-one coaching clients. I do group coaching. I still teach, at Miami-Dade College, and I try to focus as much time as possible to create content and do interviews on my YouTube channel and, Instagram, and share the good word.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do a great job of that too.
Thank you.
I would like to know, because I guess like food addiction and carb addiction, I kind of think they're sort of the same thing, because people aren't really getting addicted to eating steak, right? You can't it's hard to get overweight on a carnivore diet, but why is this happening to so many people? And what do you suggest like the first step is for somebody to reduce or get rid of their carb or food addiction?
Yeah, I think the reason why we're all so easily addicted to the carbohydrates in our environment is because society hasn't woken up just yet with regards to how addictive those substances are. Similar to how with the cigarettes, it took a very long time from the publication of the studies until public perception shifted and laws were passed. So, I mean, you could literally go to a hospital just 30 years ago and be smoking, go into, an airplane and everybody's smoking around you. So
Mm.
this is where we're at with sugar. The problem is that this is a far more powerful drug than any other drug humanity has ever known. And this is not just my words, this is the science, and this is me interviewing world leaders in addiction, like Dr. Joan Iflin. The woman is like literally one of only 2 people in the world with a PhD in nutritional addiction. Also, Dr. Vera Tarman, her interview just went live also on my YouTube channel. She wrote the book Food Junkies. She's a physician, medical doctor specializing in addiction, and she is the head. She is the director of a Renaissance rehab facility. They treat all addictions, including food addiction. Food addiction is the strongest, hardest one to break off compared to all of the other addictions. And it has to do with the fact that the triggers are everywhere, and it's socially acceptable. Not only is it socially acceptable, it is actively pushed on you. So imagine going to the holidays, spending time with your family and friends and saying no to pie and it being received easily, or supportively by the people around you, so there's all that stuff. There's also age of onset. You've been given the drug from a very young age. If you've ever been around a 3-year-old recently who's had sugar, who knows what the taste of sugar is, try to take them anywhere without them constantly bringing up this notion of they want something sweet every few hours. We're literally raising junkies. And we know that age of onset is one of the single most important variables for the strength of the addiction and how hard it's going to be for you to break it eventually, because your brain is wiring in that habit loop, which becomes the addictive loop.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
So
sense.
so basically, without taking massive action, you stand no chance. And this is why in the United States we have what 35% of the population is overweight, another 35% in some states is 40% obesity rates,
Mhm.
and the rest. So the rest 25 to 30% of Americans are not necessarily sober. Just because somebody doesn't gain body fat easily does not mean they're not equally addicted. It's just there are a lot of enzymes, a lot of genetic variations that can lead somebody to not deposit subcutaneous fat or fat right under the skin, but they can definitely become unhealthy, and they can for sure be very wildly addicted.
Mm-hmm. And so if someone is addicted to carbohydrates, what's like the first place do they start? Do we just remove them all from their diet immediately and go carnivore, or is there like a transition period of scaling things back?
So what we do know is that eventually abstinence is definitely the bedrock of sobriety and breaking that addiction. And this is why 95% of diets fail. 95% of people who lose weight on a diet regain all the weight they lost within 1 year. And that's because they don't understand that they're dealing with an addiction. So they just count their calories, get super excited, work out a lot, and drastically also reduce addictive stuff, but they're not abstinent. They're still doing maybe the Weight Watchers artificially sweetened and flavored foods, or they're doing Atkins products. Like they still have the artificial sweeteners, or they're having artificially sweetened coffee in the morning. Just because it has no calories doesn't mean it's not very addictive, because it's the sweet taste. It's not just the sugar. It's actually, in a lot of the studies, they've actually used things like saccharin and artificial sweeteners to show that it's the sweet taste that's far more addictive than heroin. So abstinence is definitely the goal. The sooner I can get you to abstain, the easier the ride's going to be. Now, can we go cold turkey? Yes, a lot of people can do that. I tend to favor the cold turkey approach. At the same time, if you've never experienced or dabbled with keto or carnivore or any low carb approach in the past, it's going to be quite a shock to your system. So maybe in the last week before we start to abstain, drop our carbohydrate intake gradually, day by day by day by day. By the end of the week, you're ready to abstain completely. And when I say abstain, I mean zero carb, zero artificial sweeteners. So you're basically focused on animal foods, animal protein, animal fat. In terms of addiction, you might be able to do vegetables. I personally don't see a reason to include vegetables. We can talk about that with regards to why I recommend the carnivore diet, which is basically what we ate throughout history. Historically, we never, our ancestors never wasted time on leaves or grasses or anything like that. Not to mention that those were very scarce because we evolved during an ice age where plants literally could not grow. Not to mention that 80% of plants in the wild are poisonous, will automatically kill you or definitely severely injure you. So whereas pretty much all animal foods are edible. So taking that anthropological, I don't know if that's the right word to use, or that historical approach, I think is really important to inform our current recommendations in nutrition, because the studies, we can talk about that, they are lacking, and they're definitely vastly influenced by industry funding.
Okay. So it seems to me that a carnivore diet is a very natural way of eating for human beings. But we see the push on the mainstream is to reduce red meat, is to eat half an egg a day, and all of these kind of ridiculous guidelines.
Yeah.
What is that just, are those just funded studies? Or like, why is there such a push to eat so many damn vegetables?
Because see, researchers are also human beings that can be influenced by bias, and they already have their own psychological bias as to what might be healthier in terms of a dietary pattern, right? So when they want to write their studies, they have to start with the hypothesis. You starting off with a bias, inherent bias already, right? Because you're hypothesizing something that you think is right. And of course, the goal in scientific research is to try to disprove it and do everything you can to disprove it. But I can tell you, I've worked on a ton of studies, both in Lebanon and in the United States at the University of Miami. You have very limited resources in research. So to think that you're really doing everything you can to try and disprove it, I've never seen it. If anything, it's always the opposite. It's always trying really hard to prove what you kind of are biased to believe is true. So why do we have this bias? Where did this bias towards eating plant-based, eating more fruits and vegetables and less animal food come from? It came from religion. It came from the Seventh-day Adventist movement. So you have Ellen G. White, she was like the head of and the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist movement in like the 1800s and early 1900s, and she influenced a lot of people like Kellogg's from the cereal. Ellen G. White founded the Seventh-day Adventist movement. She claimed to receive visions from God, and people followed her, believed everything she said. And one of her teachings was that a vegetarian diet is the healthiest, best diet in the world. But the real reason behind it is because she believed, and the whole Seventh-day Adventist movement believed, that if you eat more bland foods like vegetables, it's not stimulatory, which means the urge to masturbate is going to drop, which means you're not going to engage in urges like masturbation. So you're going to get closer to God because you're not going to sin. Now, that influenced Kellogg's, which is why he created cereal. As a matter of fact, his whole thing with regards to cornflakes was to offer this bland food that would suppress your urges. And it's true, eating bland food suppresses your urges because it's normally coming from plant foods, because you literally obliterate your sex hormones. If you don't have sex hormones anymore, your libido is crushed, so you don't have any urge for anything, not just for reproduction, but for anything, right? So his original idea was, yeah, let's do cornflakes and push it on people so that they become more pious, right? And obviously that did not fly off the shelves. It was actually his brother that decided to add sugar to the cereal to make it palatable. And so now the cereal that we have is actually Harvey Kellogg's brother. They actually stopped talking to one another over that, because you had this religious Harvey Kellogg saying, well, the whole idea is not to have something palatable. The whole idea is to push a bland food. And his brother is like, how exactly are you how are you going to sell this basically without sugar? And so they split over that. And then the brother who added the sugar became successful. And to this day, we have cornflakes with sugar in it. But that all came from the Seventh-day Adventist church movement. Also, graham crackers, same thing. It was the same ideology, like this bland food that would suppress your libido. Now, Harvey Kellogg, the guy who, so Harvey Kellogg actually super religious, 40 years of marriage, and never had sex with his wife, never consummated the marriage. He was very proud of that. And his medical education, he was a medical doctor actually, his medical education was paid for by the founder of the church, Ellen G. White, that we started talking about. So she took him in, raised him, brainwashed him, everything, and then eventually put him as the director of their hospital, which was called Battle Creek in Michigan Sanatorium. And it was one of the most successful health spas in the world. You had Henry Ford and presidents and celebrities going there. So he became the director there, and of course, they recommended a vegetarian diet. And then a nursing student, who later got into dietetics, she became Harvey Kellogg's favorite. So he kind of also, the way he was mentored by Ellen G. White, he mentored this new girl. Her name was Lena F. Cooper. So of course, she became the head dietitian of the Battle Creek Sanatorium, this spa medical facility. And so her profile was raised. She wrote her cookbooks on vegetarianism. You can literally see in her cookbooks how she talks about how we shouldn't be, harming animals and whatever. It all came really, this whole vegetarian push, it had nothing to do with science or health, right? It came with this just idea that maybe it's best not to kill animals or harm them, and at the same time, they'll get us closer to God if we don't have the urge to masturbate. We can talk about the ethical treatment of animals, because you actually kill off 25 times more sentient feeling or emotion feeling animals to feed a plant-based diet or a vegan diet, as opposed to killing, literally you need just one cow for a person for the whole year. This is actually a published paper that I've reported on my YouTube channel, like legit. So anyway, we can talk about that. It's a completely different topic. But so Lena F. Cooper, head dietitian of the hospital, a fan favorite of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, she goes on to co-found the American Dietetics Association. Right? Now we call it the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, but back then it was called, even when I went to school, we still called it the American Dietetics Association. And so now you have the head of this large organization that's setting the protocols and the academic programs and basically setting the agenda for what the practice of dietetics should entail, who's preaching this vegetarian diet. So you've got dietitians, anybody who goes through that process to become licensed is completely brainwashed with that. And so now they become researchers and they want to do nutrition studies. So the hypothesis, like nobody has ever bothered to hypothesize what would happen, if you do a carnivore diet versus, let's say, a plant-based diet. It's like no one bothered, because it's not even a suggestion in their mind, And so this is the problem with 99% of nutrition studies right now, is that they're already climbing the wrong mountain. It's like all of them, 99% of nutrition studies are pitting a junk food dieter versus a plant-based dieter who's eating the fruits and vegetables and the low fat, right? It's like, where's our ancestral diet? Why is nobody bothering to study the diet that literally made us humans, that allowed us to survive and evolve over millions of years?
And just how much, because I get a lot of pushback about this, but like just how much meat were our ancestors eating? Like, what did their diet look like? Because to me, it makes way more sense if I had a tribe to go out and hunt and bring back a big animal that's going to feed the whole village, rather than maybe you find, 30 berries or something. You don't even know if they're going to poison you or kill you.
Exactly. It was as close to 100% meat, red meat, as humanly possible. That's what it was. That was our diet. There was never any cave painting of a salad or a vegetable that has ever been found. Never. That says something. Not to mention, we evolved during an ice age, right, where you literally did not have access to vegetation that was edible. Not to mention that if you did ever come across, because there were periods, like brief periods of time, where the Earth's climate naturally warmed up a little bit, but then it would go back into an ice age, right? And even in those brief periods of time, the fruits and the tubers or any kind of plant foods that we ever came across, the vast majority of them were bitter. A lot of them had toxins in them. So a lot of ancestors had to sacrifice themselves until we as humanity realized what plants not to touch and what plants may be okay. And even with those, you never had anything resembling the amount of carbohydrate content that we find in our modern world. So even an apple, that never existed. What we have crab apples, which were literally 2 inches in diameter, 18 calories each, only had 4 grams of sugar. It was 5 grams of carbs, of which 1 gram was fiber, so that left you with 4 grams of sugar, versus the regular apple, which is like at least 25 grams of sugar. So, and not to mention that most of those crab apples, not all of them were edible. A lot of them were bitter and toxic as well. So, same thing, potatoes. This was literally the size of a potato, those tiny little things, the white russet potatoes. You never had those humongous ones that they sell nowadays. Bananas, any kind of plant food that you can think of, go on Google and search for wild version of it. Wild carrots, you'll be shocked wild banana. We never had this amount of concentrated carbohydrates. A banana was pretty much all seedy, disgusting, and fibrous. Like, we never would have eaten that ever.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. What about fruits versus vegetables? Because we know that the vegetables, and we could talk about that too, like the plant toxins that are inside of vegetables, are those in fruits as well?
You
Or
still
is
have
fruits
toxins
not as
in
bad?
fruits. Yeah, you definitely still have toxins in fruits. Historically, we may have nibbled on very, very tiny amounts of very ancient wild versions of fruits, but never vegetables. Why would we ever waste time on grass or leaves? What was there was It's almost no nutrition in there.
Hmm,
You can get all of that and way, way more from an animal and its organ meats, and in far more bioavailable versions where your body doesn't have to rely on your own bodies to convert it into biologically active form. Whereas, like, for example, people think, oh, carrots have vitamin A. Actually, carrots have zero vitamin A. What they have is a precursor to vitamin A called beta carotenoid. The population at large varies in its genetic ability to convert the beta carotenoid into active vitamin A or retinol. So
hmm.
some people have 0% conversion rate. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you're genetically amazingly lucky, at best, you've got a 22% conversion rate, right? You don't have any biologically active form of omega-3s in plant foods, right? You have the alpha-linolenic acid, which is pretty much useless for us. What we want is the animal form. And that is like around 4%, if you're lucky, conversion rate from the plant form to the animal form, which is the EPA and DHA. But if you do have fatty fish, you're going to get all of the EPA and DHA, right? And you don't need to rely on your body to convert it into biologically active omega-3s.
I see.
So, yeah.
Interesting. And like, what are some of the things that are missing in a vegan or vegetarian diet that you can only get in meat?
Whoa, I did a video that angered a lot of vegans.
Hmm.
The title was 13 Nutrients at Risk of Deficiency on a Vegan Diet. And after I published it, I was like, oh, I should have included so many more. But in a nutshell, I mean, first of all, the easy one, right? Vitamin B12, it's completely absent. Cholesterol, your body cannot make all the cholesterol that you need. It can only make 75 to 80% top of the cholesterol that you need to then create the sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. So vitamin D even, right? It comes from cholesterol. So I don't care how much time you spend in the sun to try and get that natural vitamin D. If you're not eating animal foods and cholesterol from the animal foods, you are never going to optimize for your vitamin D status. You're never going to optimize for your hormonal balance. You're never going to be able to create optimal levels of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I mean, all of them, all of the sex hormones, right?
Hmm.
So those are completely absent. Vitamin K2, completely absent. If you have a deficiency of vitamin K2, you're gonna not be able to utilize the calcium. The calcium is going to be stuck in your blood vessels and around organs, where it's going to calcify your vessels and organs, and it won't be able to go into your bones where it's supposed to be to strengthen them. So now you are at increased risk of osteoporosis and increased risk of kidney stones and kidney disease and increased risk of heart disease because of all this calcium that's hanging around. You need vitamin K2 to usher the calcium away from your blood and into your bones where it's supposed to be. And that's only found in grass-fed animal foods and dairy products and eggs. Right? I mean, those are like just completely absent. We talked about vitamin A. You don't have vitamin A at all in plant foods, right? You have precursors, and most of us genetically. So when I'm talking about the genetic ability to convert vitamin A, the beta carotenoid into vitamin A, we said it was anywhere between 0% to 22%. The 22% person, not only do they have to carry the genetic variation that would allow them to be a good converter, on top of that, they have to have a very healthy system so that their system is actually functioning at maximal capacity and utilizing the full potential of their genes. Most of us aren't there, right? There's environmental toxins, maybe you're drinking, maybe you're smoking, maybe you're not exercising, not getting enough sunshine. I mean, there's so many things that are going to drop your ability to be an optimal converter. You know, and so yeah, and then you've got taurine, carnosine, creatine, essential. Those aren't vitamins nor minerals, but they are equally as important as the vitamins and minerals that we talk so much about, that are going to help you reverse the aging process, support collagen, the collagen matrix in your body and your joints, optimal brain function. I mean, the list goes on and on.
And is there anything missing from a carnivore diet where you would suggest supplementation? Like, are these beef organs, things like that? Is that necessary, or is that just good for some people in certain situations? Or what's your take?
I think, yeah. So if you're coming from a vegan background, it might be a good idea to supplement with organ meats or take desiccated organ meats if you don't like the taste of it. But I know a lot of carnivores, decades of eating nothing but red meat and no organ meats or no supplementation, and they're thriving. So I don't see a need to supplement in any way, shape, or form. And I mean, it would make sense, right? Because it is our species-specific diet. That is what we ate strictly for millions of years. So how could it ever be devoid in any critical nutrient, right? You know, all we ate is red meat. We were far taller than we are today. We had bigger brains, bigger skulls. We never had misalignment of the teeth because we had wide enough jaws because of our bigger skulls that would allow enough space for all of our teeth. And we never had heart disease. Heart disease is a very, very modern disease. It was so rare that it wasn't included in the medical textbooks up until the 1900s. You know, and now all of a sudden, oh, red meat causes heart disease. Oh, really? How did our species survive 99.99% of its existence here as a species here on Earth? We never had heart attacks or heart disease. And when all we ate was saturated fat and the cholesterol in the red meat, that's all we ate.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Not even cancers. All those things are modern diseases.
Modern diet, modern diseases, huh?
Right? Yeah. You start including seed oils and you start eating processed foods, even olives. You couldn't go and just have an olive off of an olive tree. It's so bitter. It's got toxic compounds. It literally has to be detoxified. You know, anything from a plant that has to go through processing, or any food really for that matter, that has to go through a series of processing is not food that we ever ate. And so we don't know how it's going to affect us. But I guess now we do know, right? With the rates of obesity and heart disease and cancers and type 2 diabetes and kidney disease.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What have you noticed as far as mental health goes and people getting on a carnivore diet?
I've actually worked with a lot and interviewed a lot of people who literally saved their lives just by eating a carnivore diet. Like, that was it. Completely eliminating anything else and eating nothing but a carnivore diet. And in some cases, nothing but a lion diet, which is ruminant meat only. So, you know, no seafood or things like that or dairy. So, you know, that goes to show you the power that food has over our brain, because the brain is a physical organ that can suffer inflammation just like every other organ in your body. So if you have a joint that hurts because of inflammation, it's the same thing that could potentially happen to your brain if you're living in a state of high inflammation, right? And so to think that there is no link between what you put in your diet and the effects it's going to have on your brain as an organ is just wild to me. You know, and unfortunately, a lot of psychiatrists and a lot of people in the field, they don't understand that that is our species-specific diet. So they try to clean up the diet, and they might want to, you know, not be one of those doctors that are only prescribing pills, and they try to take the time and talk a little bit about lifestyle, but they're also giving out the wrong lifestyle information.
What do you think is happening for people that are seeing results, say with mental health, on a carnivore diet? Is it is it the meat that's so special? Is it the removal of carbohydrates and plant toxins? Is it ketosis, or is it
Yeah, I think
a
it's
combination?
I think it's a combination of ketosis and the removal of things that we're reacting to. A lot of those things are in plant foods, those plant self-defense chemicals that, because the plant is definitely not just sitting there in the ground waiting for any insect or animal to come and eat it without any defense mechanism whatsoever, like,
Mm.
but that's how a lot of people live their lives, completely oblivious to the fact that plants are master chemists that over millions of years have perfected their ability to defend themselves by injuring and massively reducing the reproductive ability of the species that's trying to eat it, right? Because it's a survival of the fittest.
Mhm.
So so it's the plant anti-nutrients that can inflame our bodies, which is why you see a lot of autoimmune diseases go into remission once they do a carnivore diet. It's like one of the top most important applications for a carnivore diet. It is that inflammation that it garners. So there's that. There's the blood sugar imbalances that go away. So now you have very low, stable blood sugar all day long that massively impact your mood. The ketones, the brain loves to use this type of fat when that you start running on when you're eating a carnivore diet. So it's a lot of explanations, but I would say the biggest thing is like the things that you're not eating anymore, which are the carbohydrates and the plant anti-nutrients.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. What is I know we only have a few more minutes left before you got to go. I wanted to know what your take is on coffee.
Huh. so what is why do we drink coffee? For the caffeine, right?
Yeah.
What is caffeine? It is a natural insecticide slash pesticide, same thing, that is produced by the coffee bean plant with one single purpose, and that is to hopefully kill or at the very least massively damage the predator, like an insect or an animal that's attempting to nibble on that coffee bean plant.
Mhm.
Right? It's an insecticide. It's designed to kill. And the way that it does that is that it suppresses the appetite of insects. So in the case of insects, it can kill them off because the insect is like no longer hungry, it doesn't eat, starves to death. With humans, we're much larger animals. We're not going to starve ourselves to death, but it's going to massively impact your thirst and hunger signals. So you start, becoming your health deteriorates over time. There is that. So it's not something that we need, nor I think is it completely innocent if we have it. It has very specific effects. Personally, I've quit drinking coffee and my headaches have gone away. I used to get tension headaches if I had a especially stressful day, or didn't get enough sleep. It's like not getting enough sleep was a risk factor. Having a stressful day a risk factor. And if you had both in one day, definitely I was going to get a headache. And so that all went away. I cannot remember the last time I had a headache. It's probably been a year and a half, which is exactly the amount of time it's been since I quit drinking coffee.
Wow.
So yeah, and then with the addiction component, because I work a lot with addiction with my clients, if they are addicted to sugar and carbohydrates, which most of them are, then you have the brain circuits that are related to one another. You always have had coffee in the past linked with cream and sugar. So if you're ingesting caffeine, it's lighting up the areas in your brain, the neurons that are involved with caffeine and coffee intake. They are already connected to the sugar area in your brain. So it's like by association, brain cells or neurons that wire together. So if you have two brain cells or neurons that are activated at the same time, they form connections. They literally get connected, and you have myelin sheath. You literally have like a highway now that connects them both, so that in the future they fire at the same time. This is how you build habits in anything you do. And it also can work to your detriment, because now you're having the caffeine, but it already has, and please excuse this horrific pen that I have. I was actually shopping for pink and glittery pens yesterday. I should have bought them. So anyway, so you have the caffeine, right? It's lighting up that part of your brain. It's already that neuron, or it's actually a bunch of neurons, right? But let's say it's one neuron. It's actually literally connected to another neuron that's involved with sugar acquisition, and you need that dopamine hit in the form of a sugar hit. And so it's by also like researching and talking with all the world leaders in sugar addiction, they agree it's just 10% of people who continue to consume caffeine can stay sober off the carbohydrates and sugar long term. Only 10%. So if you're serious about completely overcoming your sugar and carbohydrate addiction, which pretty much everybody is addicted to, it's a spectrum, but we're all on the spectrum. I would say the vast majority of people are on the more severe end of the spectrum. Then caffeine has no place.
Wow. Okay. That's fascinating. It's going to upset a lot of people. Okay, so where, myself included, so where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so it's easy to find me. My name is Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, and I know it's showing up on your end. I know I can't see it, but it should be there on the screen somewhere. So Dr. Sarah with an H, Zaldivar, Zaldivar. I have my website, Dr. Dr. Sarah with an H, Zaldivar.com. I'm very active on YouTube and Instagram. YouTube is my name as well, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. On Instagram, the handle is at dr.sarah.zaldivar. And you can always email me if you're, the coaching packages are always outlined and pinned on my Instagram and on my website, but you can also always email me at drsarahzaldivar@gmail.com. So it's very, very easy to find me. And I'm sure, is this going to be on YouTube?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm sure it's going to be in the description box below as well, the link, so people can find it easily.
Oh, yes, it will. Well, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, you were fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on, and yeah, I learned a ton.
I'm so happy to hear that. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Justin, for this opportunity. It's always fun for me to talk about something I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be great. I'll cut a lot of clips up for us on Instagram, and I can compress them and send them to you if you'd like to share them.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And you can also add me as a collaborator.
Oh, okay.
So the more content, the better.
I totally agree. Absolutely.
Fantastic.